Welcome to another edition of Our City. A couple of things going around the city of Elizabeth this week. On Thursday, August 3rd at 11 o'clock in the morning, we're going to have a graduation ceremony in City Council chambers with new fire department recruits. Under the rules now, it takes almost 8 months, 6 to 8 months to train new firemen, and 20 men will graduate. This ceremony in City Council chambers on the third floor of City Hall at 50 Winfield Scott Plaza. August is usually a very slow month, so if you need any more information concerning this event or any other events, please call our Public Information Office at 908-820-4124. And I look forward to this evening's show, where I'm going to be talking to some folks about climate change, Princeton Doctoral student. This should be interesting. Please stay with us.
Sometimes you learn by helping others learn. Kane University.
Welcome back to Our City, where I'm pleased to be joined in the first segment of the show by Miss Elizabeth Yankovsky, who is a Princeton NOAA lab doctoral student, or known as Noaa. Elizabeth, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, well, first of all, Elizabeth, you got to tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into why you're studying what you're studying.
Yeah, I'd love to. So my name is Elizabeth Yankovsky. I was originally born in the Ukraine, and I grew up mostly in South Florida as well as South Carolina. And I've been to New Jersey for the past 2 years in Princeton's Atmospheric and Oceanic Sciences program. And I'm studying oceanography as well as climate science.
So Elizabeth, Florida and South Carolina, any big differences there for you?
Yeah, I think I really enjoyed living in Florida just because of kind of how active the weather was there, and it actually really inspired me to pursue climate science in general. When I was living in Florida, it was one of the most active hurricane seasons on record, and that very much inspired me to want to study
You're not one of these people who runs towards the hurricane, are you? We see on TV, what are they called, hurricane chasers or whatever they're called?
Yeah. Not exactly, but I do think that nature is really amazing, and I do enjoy being outside and just kind of observing.
What part of Florida?
It was Hollywood, Florida, so it's kind of in the southern portion.
Southern portion, south, yeah. And Columbia, you told me you're in Columbia, South Carolina. Yeah,
so my family now lives in Columbia, South Carolina, and that's also where I did my undergrad.
Well, the mayor there is a guy named Steve Benjamin. So if you ever get to meet him, he's a good friend. Tell him I said hello.
All right.
So you did your undergrad in South Carolina?
Yeah, I was studying physics and geophysics back in South Carolina. And that's kind of when I first decided that I really wanted to pursue oceanography as a career.
What made you pick Princeton?
I applied to actually a lot of different schools, but part of it was just how good the program is here. There's a lot of really great research being done on climate modeling and oceanography. Also, I really love the state of New Jersey, and that's another. I kind of wanted to stay in the Northeast in general.
So you think after this is all settled and done that you would relocate to the Northeast?
Yeah, I would really love to get a job somewhere in the Northeast.
You would?
Yeah, definitely.
So Princeton University naturally is a premier school in the entire world.
It's a very inspiring place, for sure.
Climate change, the season of storms, NOAA, NOAA. Explain to our constituency, our people watching, what is the NOAA Labs? What does it stand for?
So NOAA stands for National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and they have this lab in Princeton where I also kind of do research. I am required to say that the views that I express aren't necessarily reflective of those of NOAA. But overall, it's a really great lab. They do a lot of world famous climate modeling, and they are some of the leaders in this field. So,
when you applied for grad school, Princeton was above some of the other schools in this area?
Yeah,
in your opinion.
Yeah, also Rutgers actually has a very good oceanography program as well. But in terms of modeling, I think Princeton is definitely one of the best around the country and also around the world.
So getting accepted to Princeton's a big deal.
Oh yeah, I was very excited. It was actually the last place that I heard back from when I was applying to grad school.
Oh, they made you wait.
Yeah, they did. It was nerve-wracking, but I was very excited.
So you're living in the Princeton area when you're here?
Yeah, I'm living about 15 minutes away from the campus.
Good for you.
It's a very quiet area, but I very much enjoy it.
What's the Princeton Center? Is that where you work out of?
Yeah, the Princeton Center is kind of the NOAA lab, and that's where all of these researchers have their offices, and also where all of the supercomputers are located. And that's where I also have an office space.
Tell me
That's
what a
where I work.
supercomputer is in regards to this area.
Yeah, so supercomputers are very similar to just the types of computers that we use, except for the fact that they combine a lot of these processing units into one huge computer. So it's just much more powerful, and it's able to do a lot more calculations more efficiently.
So the mathematical calculations or
Yeah, so a lot
calculus calculations, things like that, where you don't have to sit down and, like when I had to do it, you had to do it by hand?
Yeah, exactly. Back in the 20th century, all of this was done by hand. They had kind of computing centers where actually just people would sit down and try to do all of this algebra by hand, and it's a huge effort. So this whole advent of computer technologies has really changed this field. And
so what do you do? What do you do? Just plug in certain numbers for whatever the algorithm is and see what the results are?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different types of work that can be done in this field. So some of it actually involves developing the models and improving how they do the calculations to make them more efficient. The climate system is extremely hard to model because it's very nonlinear, which means that very small scale effects can potentially change your whole climate and your whole system. It's kind of like trying to predict where your life is going to be in 10 years. You know, you could take a wrong turn down one road one day and that'll completely change who you'll meet and, you know, your whole future. So climate is very much like that, where there's a lot of things that we can't resolve because computers aren't infinitely powerful. So there are a lot of small scale processes that computers just can't calculate because they're not powerful enough.
So in a very learned way, you just discovered why weathermen can get it wrong a lot.
Yeah, that's absolutely the reason why. It's because it's extremely hard to capture such a nonlinear system. It's kind of the whole idea of butterfly effect, where a butterfly flapping its wings in Japan can potentially cause a tornado to form in the Midwest. You know, it's like this idea of a lot of different scales of motion.
Are you serious with that statement?
It's kind of a metaphor, but
okay.
it's kind of an exaggeration of what actually happens in nature, where certain perturbations are not confined to that scale that they occur on. A lot of things propagate to larger
So
scales.
uneducated people like me always blame the weathermen when they get it wrong, right?
Yeah,
And
but there's only so much weathermen can do. It's a really tough science, and I think that's also what makes it really exciting, is that there's a lot of questions that still need to be answered and a lot of ways in which these climate models still need to be improved.
So who does the Princeton NOAA labs inform nationally, regionally, and locally regarding climate change issues? Who do they form and how do they do it?
Yeah, so that's done, again, on all scales. So on the community level, a lot of the researchers that work in the NOAA lab, they do a lot of outreach events. So they come to local schools, local libraries, and local community events, and they just talk to people about their research, about the environment, about what people can do to get involved. On larger scale, so national and even global, there's scientific conferences that the researchers go to, and also journals in which they publish their findings.
Do you have to publish something as a doctoral student?
Yeah,
it has to be an original work?
Yeah, that's kind of the idea, is that towards the end of your program, you'll come up with some original.
Have you given you probably can't say it because you want to keep it quiet, but have you given a thought process to what your doctoral thesis will be?
Yeah, I have. I've been working on it for about a year now, and it's a lot of work trying to exactly decide what my research direction is going to be. But mostly I've been focusing on the Arctic Ocean. That's a region that's very kind of vulnerable to climate change, and there's a lot of interesting dynamics that's taking place there.
So why is the Arctic area more vulnerable than the Antarctic region?
So part of it is the fact that the Arctic is basically an ice sheet that's sitting in water, whereas the Antarctic region is a continent and it has ice sheets on the continent. So it's very easy to melt this Arctic sea ice, and it's actually melting very rapidly. And even in the Antarctic, there's still, like recently it was in the news where a huge piece of a
was
glacier.
sliced.
Yeah,
right.
exactly. So even there, you know, there are definitely big changes that are happening, but in the Arctic Ocean, it's even more pronounced.
So, you know, the big political question is it man-made or is it not?
Right.
We were talking before the show that once most of the Earth was covered in ice, and fluorocarbons didn't
absolutely.
change that process. So, but the political argument can be made, and can it be proven though?
I think it's very hard to prove at this
Right.
point, again, because of these nonlinearities, and human effects from some of these industrial causes have only been around for about 150 years or even less than that. So it's very difficult when you look at all of the fluctuations that occur in the climate system to really isolate what was caused by humans, especially when we're looking at such a short time scale. But there have been definitely kind kind of issues that were obviously human, like for example with the ozone layer, and after it began to be regulated, there was a significant improvement in there. So
that gap is actually shortening now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We've improved the hole in the ozone layer.
Yeah, exactly.
So from Princeton's Noaa Lab's perspective, how can residents, average folks like me, become active partners in addressing climate change nationally or regionally or locally?
Yeah, so I would like to again emphasize this idea of the butterfly effect, where if people, maybe do something very small, it could potentially have very large consequences further down the road. Recently I was watching a video of a sea turtle that had a plastic straw stuck in its nose, just, like one of these kind of straws that we see every day. Many of us use them, many times a day. And this plastic straw was just wedged into its nostril, and the video showed the vet actually pulling the straw out, and you could tell that the turtle was in a lot of pain. So I just really encourage people to think about these small actions that they do every day. For example, maybe don't use plastic straws, or just make really small changes to what you do on a daily basis. And don't think that just because it's a small change, it's not going to have an impact, because I think a really kind of beautiful aspect of nature and of life in general is that really small changes could have really profound impacts.
So August is a big month for you, and maybe you can share with our viewers what activities you're going to be doing during the month of August. Yeah,
so actually in August I'm going to be going to France. There's going to be a pretty large summer school that's taking place there, where scientists from all over the world will be kind of gathering to study climate and to think about how we can improve climate models. And I'm really excited because I think also France is a country that's very focused on policy geared towards
since you're going that far, you're going to sneak into the Ukraine and say hello to your family? Or?
Probably not.
No, probably not. You're closer for FaceTime, right?
Yeah.
So what's the difference between a significant storm and a hurricane? And a perfect example, Elizabeth, is, I don't know if you were living here then, but Hurricane Sandy is not called a hurricane, but it's called a superstorm.
Yeah, I think.
What's the difference?
Yeah, I think the major difference is just kind of the wind speeds, and also in some cases the fact that hurricanes have this rotational character, where it's a low pressure system that is also rotating, and that allows the winds to become much stronger.
Because in 2012, when that hit us, there was a lot of people afterwards, when the meteorologists, or for lack of a better word, you probably have a better term, would only call it a superstorm. They wouldn't call it a hurricane.
Right.
And most of us said, well, what the hell's the difference?
Yeah. The other difference is that hurricanes also tend to form over water, whereas superstorms can form pretty much anywhere over land and other places.
Have you studied or looked at any of the residual effects of Sandy in New Jersey or along the coastline, or how you think, because some models, the European model got it correct. The American models, I don't know if you've researched this at all, but the American models got it wrong. You didn't know that?
Yeah, no, I actually didn't know that.
Oh, okay.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it was because everybody was studying it, and the second half of the show is the Coast Guard guy, and maybe he remembers.
Yeah,
but
maybe.
There were some models who got it correct and some didn't. So some prepared for it and some did not.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Can you share the difference, what this difference means to our city and region between significant storms and a hurricane?
Yeah, I think mainly the difference lies in how people prepare for whether it's going to be a hurricane or a significant storm. So obviously if it's a hurricane, anybody near coastal areas should definitely evacuate the regions. Although I don't think that people necessarily should panic or raise too much hype about, hurricanes, but I think definitely just being safe and knowing kind of what protocols to follow based on whether it's a hurricane or whether it's a significant storm. And I think the Coast Guard could also.
So Elizabeth, one of the things that we have an advantage now is we actually have time to warn people, right?
Yeah.
Which we didn't have 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah, that's true. That's also partly due to the fact that our climate models are improving and our weather prediction abilities are improving, just with more powerful computers.
And the computers, the trustworthiness of the computers, is there a human element in the computers, you think? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, especially when talking about climate change, one of the biggest sources of uncertainty in these climate models is how the human factor is going to change. So how humans will evolve with time, like maybe they'll develop new technologies that don't use as much CO2. And that actually is really the biggest uncertainty in really predicting the climate out to hundreds of years, is not knowing how people will evolve in the future.
So it's more of a personal question. What does your family think of a budding scientist in their mix?
Actually, it's pretty interesting. My dad is also an oceanographer, and so is my grandfather. So it's kind of, I've kind of grown up in that environment a little bit.
So you're not breaking ground here?
Not too much. I think they're very proud of me for sure, but it's kind of also in the family.
So your father and grandfather studied. So have they talked with you about the changes and how they studied compared to models today? And
yeah, I think one of the big changes was the fact that the computational abilities back then were very much more limited than now. And I think people kind of had to rely more on understanding some of the physics properties and just kind of developing more of an intuition for how the ocean works rather than trying to fully model everything. And also they relied more on measurements as well.
So Elizabeth, we have to break. I could probably talk to you for another hour about this, but tell our viewers if there's anything you want to leave them with regarding some of the things we talked about.
Yeah, I would just like to emphasize the fact that they should really feel like the actions that they do now will really make an impact, and I very much encourage them to be mindful of how they live their lives and really try to live it in a environmentally conscious way.
Elizabeth, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to really explain to our viewers and join us here on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Good luck in the rest of your doctoral studies.
Thank you.
I want to thank Elizabeth, and please stay with us after these messages where I'll be back with Mr. Justin Boes of the U.S. Coast Guard. He's a Chief Boatswain mate. Please stay with us.
We're an American original, dependable, historic, nuanced, with all the comforts of home, even when you're just visiting. So we're celebrating for all that we've left untouched and all that we've changed. A place where the past meets the future. So consider this your invitation.
We've been celebrating here in Elizabeth for 350 years, and we're just getting started. Welcome back to our city, where I'm pleased to be joined by Mr. Justin Boes, who is the U.S. Coast Guard Chief Boatswain's mate. What is a boatswain?
A boatswain is a small boat operator.
Okay.
So for the most of my Coast Guard career, we've been driving small boats.
So tell me about yourself, Justin. You've been on 21 years, you told me?
21 years. So it started way back in 1996 in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, and have spent 90% of my career south of I-10, so it's a welcome sight to be north of I-10.
I was going to say, Elizabeth was on the first part of the show. She's a southern girl, too, and she's enjoying New Jersey, and you've only been here a couple of weeks, you told me.
That's correct. I've been in Key West about 11 years of my 21, so I've been kind of spoiled down in the south. But
well, Key West is a fun spot.
New Jersey is a great spot. Couldn't be happier to be here.
Really?
Absolutely.
You got family here? Or?
I have a daughter that lives, well, she goes close to where Elizabeth goes to school. She was at Rider University.
Oh, right around the corner, yeah. Right.
So
you get to spend time with her then?
I do.
Oh, good. So the U.S. Coast Guard and your role with it, tell us about that.
So my role is I'm the Executive Petty Officer at Coast Guard Station Sandy Hook. So I am the administrative guru over there for the good order and discipline of the crew, make sure our schedules get put out and our crews go do what they need to do to affect search and rescue, maritime SAR response. We do ports, waterways, and coastal security, or pretty much anything the boating public needs us to do. And
tell us about that, Justin. You know, we were talking with Elizabeth about Hurricane Sandy or Superstorm Sandy. During a storm, you're not out there, right? Because otherwise people got to rescue you.
Definitely not in the storm. So that's why we try to teach preparedness. And if it's coming, don't fight it. Leave town if you can. If you have a way to get out of town, go. Because when the storm's at its worst, the Coast Guard can't launch. We consider ourselves to be a premier maritime service, and you know the best of the best can't go out during the middle of a hurricane. We just can't do it.
Can't do it. So but you will warn people ahead of time to get the boats off the water, type of thing.
Absolutely. June is really the start of our preparedness. Like June is we mark that calendar on the Coast Guard state. That's when we start dusting off our exercises. We start doing hurricane preparedness drills. We get back into the community, dust off some of our old relationships with the local folks to let them know that here we're here. But also plan well ahead for hurricanes. Get up in the morning and make it your routine. You know, in the hurricane months, the Coast Guard makes that part of our daily routine. We check the weather every single day. If there's storms or tropical depressions, we mark all that. We follow it and try to make sure that we're prepared.
So if you know what's in one part of the water as compared to another part of the water, you don't have to tell the people 50 miles south there's a problem. What do you do there in that case?
I mean, if it's farther away, it's more of awareness, you know, because people might evacuate to our area, depending if it's north or south of us. And then it might we have to plan on augmenting other crews. So if there's a superstorm or a hurricane down in South Florida, there's a chance that New Jersey Coast Guard crews or local EMS will have to travel south to help. So we prepare for that as well.
You take boats all the way down here?
We can.
You can?
Absolutely.
And the Coast Guard, we were talking with Elizabeth in the first segment of the show. Is her organization one of the folks that would notify you or impacting storms and what they think they would do locally?
When it comes
make judgments there?
When it comes to the expertise of storms, I think that Noaa certainly is a huge benefactor there, as well as just meteorology in general. So we ping heavily off of the recommendation from the National Weather Service and what Noaa has to say, because the Coast Guard we're definitely the search and rescue experts, but we're not the meteorological experts.
And you don't have people that do that in the Coast Guard. You rely on others for that.
That is correct.
Okay. So the Coast Guard, what do you, walk us through a day on how you prepare? Say you knew hurricanes. You told us about Hurricane Katrina, right?
Sure.
You were involved in that.
Sure.
So what was your preparation in anticipation of Katrina hitting land?
I mean, our preparation is very similar to your preparation. So at the station, we more or less batten down the hatches. So we identify essential crew, and we try to send everybody else that doesn't have to be there away. Board up the windows, extra sandbags, make any kind of provision and preparation that we can, extra water, all the batteries, all the things that you guys would do, we do as well. On a bigger scale, we also need to make sure that our ports are safe. So we'll upgrade our port conditions, and those are usually based on time. So 72, 48, 24 hours out, and then when the storm's imminent, we make sure that the mariner understands that there's precautions they need to take, along with our shoreside infrastructure and shoreside facilities, to make sure that they're ready to ride out a storm if they're going to ride it off. Obviously, if we can recommend evacuation, we do that, just because I know home is a sense of home, but your home doesn't do you any good if your home is moving with the tide.
So in Katrina, it was recommended for evacuation.
Absolutely it was, from the panhandle of Florida to some parts of Texas.
That far?
It was that far.
That's a couple thousand miles, right?
So it was a big storm.
Yeah, I know that. And the brunt of it was in Louisiana, or not really? Or
debatable. I think that the eye kind of ran the Louisiana-Mississippi border, but you had problems in both sides of of the coin. New Orleans is below sea level, so they had a horrible flood. The Mississippi side more above sea level, but it just destroyed the first 2 miles of coastline. Okay. So bad on both sides.
When you talk about procedures and you talk about making the shore safe, what exactly do they do?
We recommend to the general boating public, if you have a boat, if you can take it out of the water, take it out of the water. Okay. Absolutely. If you can store it somewhere, store it. If you can't, go somewhere where the tidal surge isn't going to be as bad, the winds aren't predicted to be horrible, or the waves aren't going to be big. Take it to a safe haven. If you can't, anchor it, moor it, tie it to a ball, but make sure it's stable. If you live on the water, make sure that your household items are back inside, somewhere secure, because it's not necessarily that the wind is blowing, it's what the wind decides to blow. So you have a house that might be able to withstand 70, 80 mile an hour winds, but the minute somebody's patio table goes through your window, it's another issue. So keep everything secure. And everything meaning fuel. If you have fuel cans, stow them properly, because if they end up in the water, then we have pollution response problems. So
who cleans that up?
Well, the Coast Guard plays a pretty pivotal role in that. We don't necessarily clean it up, but we'll take the report and we'll get the right people out there to clean it up for you.
Because in Barnegat Bay, there were cars, houses. You weren't here, but there was a bridge right off of the Manahawkin Bridge. There was actually a house in the middle of the water, and you had the Ferris wheel. You saw that picture, I'm sure.
Yeah, I did.
It doesn't compare to Katrina, but still, it was our mess. Who cleans it up?
I mean, we will get people to come out there and clean it up. And I mean, if it's something you can afford, I think that's when the community pulls together. So after a storm, it's the neat sense of community. Watch everybody come back and try to just pick things up and clean things up. And we don't recommend that if you're not trained in kind of pollution response, please don't respond to it. Just call the Coast Guard, any of our numbers, call the Coast Guard and let us know. We can get people out there to help clean them up.
So this might be a silly question, but what do you do if you're on the water in this situation?
Safe haven. Find a place where the storm's not going. That's why awareness is huge. So get on the Marine Weather Band radio and listen. Make phone calls and listen. Follow the hurricane track. If you see one coming across, follow it. Maybe that means to go north, that might mean go south, but try to find a safe haven. If worse comes to you, call us and let us know you're out there. Awareness is huge. So
a non-boating person, can hurricanes or storms crop up without any notification? Is that possible in today's world?
I don't want to say that it's a benefit of a hurricane, but the consistent thing with the hurricanes, they typically don't just spring up. You can see from the tropical depression as they make their way across. Last minute directional changes, sure, but we don't start changing port conditions for, we do the 72, 48, 24 hours out. That's usually enough time, but I mean, if you just turn on your favorite weather channel in the morning or get online and look, you can usually see when storms are coming across. And this is a pretty hot topic right now. So storm trackers are all over the place. So just make yourself aware of what's going on.
So are there hot shots that don't, they're going to test it anyway and they cause you guys grief?
Don't know if it causes us grief, but there's always going to be the person that says they can withstand a Category 5 hurricane. I don't recommend it ever because we're really, really good at going out and doing search and rescue, but there's not many folks that can go out and do that in that kind of weather because, like you said, I have to keep our crews safe and I have to keep my folks safe, and I don't want to turn into a search and rescue mission myself. What
made you join the Coast Guard?
I grew up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, so every year I would see the Coast Guard Festival. So I got,
it's on the lake?
It's on Grand Haven, Michigan. So
yeah. It's on Lake Michigan?
It is. I watched the Coast Guard leave all the time. And I decided that it's a selfless service. I love my job. It's one of the few where we just go out and save lives. That's our job. It's treated me well for 21 years, and I will stay in it as long as they let me stay in it.
Okay. So the local role of the Coast Guard during the significant storm. I mean,
sure.
Some of the things we talked about were nationally getting information from Elizabeth.
Correct.
What do you tell a mayor?
Well,
what's the local role?
We're here for you. We do a lot of networking with our local fire departments, police departments, first responders. We work closely with all of them, especially if we try to mingle the law enforcement side of it. There's a large boating public. So the Coast Guard goes out all the time and we do recreational boating safety. We work closely with all of local agencies. So we're here for you. If there's ever a question about am I doing the right thing for hurricane preparedness, call the Coast Guard station. Let us know.
Do you answer them?
Absolutely.
Oh, you do?
Sure.
Or you get some operator that says
no. You call us. We'll get our communications watchstanders there all the time. So you'll always get one of us.
And businesses and residents prepare for a storm. Real simple, right? Get an emergency kit type of thing.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Stock up. If you're going to ride the storm out, make sure you're prepared. Things that you don't necessarily think about, obviously you're going to need food, water, non-perishables, batteries, flashlight, have a radio. People forget how to use radios because everything is streaming through our phone. There's a good chance the cell phone service isn't going to work. So be prepared for that. Make sure you have extra medication because your local pharmacy is probably not going to be open if a significant storm comes through. You're going to lose power. So be prepared to be stuck. And I think the biggest thing I can ask people to do is once the storm goes through, be patient. People are trying to get to you, they're trying to help, but there's only so much to do.
I was in Florida during Andrew.
So then you know about
the
patience.
Week after Andrew, I should say, and helped a friend clean out his house. But it's driving through that was difficult.
And it's dangerous.
Yeah.
And so, if you can avoid it, avoid it.
So after a storm, people need to be patient.
Absolutely.
And that's probably what people are not.
They want to hurry up and get home if they evacuate, but that may not be the best place for you because you're not going to have those creature comforts like you're used to.
Yeah, but how do you tell an American that you can't have creature comfort? That's the question of the day, right, Justin?
You come back the day after hurricane and you're going to find out pretty firsthand that you don't have them.
I want to thank you for taking the time to join us on the show.
Thank you.
And as well as your knowledge in educating the residents.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank Mr. Justin Boes and also Miss Elizabeth Yankovsky for a great presentation and a terrific show this evening. We'll see you next week on another edition of Our City.
Why do we like it here? Let's just say the reasons are diverse. Kane University.